David Mark from ABC. Can you explain what it felt like on the field? You dominated that, it seemed like you dominated that first 25 minutes, and then once the French scored their first goal, the game changed. Can you tell me what the change was on the pitch and what you were trying to do to resurrect things?
Well, I think naturally after we scored, they get a burst of energy, and that kind of wake-up call, I guess. So naturally, they're going to step their levels up, and that's probably a lesson for us to learn when you're trying to play out of a compact shape, to try and be stronger in those moments. And losing the first goal from a second phase of a set piece, obviously disappointing as well, considering like we thought we were still in a pretty good position in terms of the way we were playing at that time. But yeah, lessons to be learnt. But obviously that positive was the fact that we started the game so well and had such a good spell during that period.
Can you explain what the feeling was like when they were getting on top and they started to dominate play, and you were trying to get back into the game?
Yeah, I think we handled it pretty well. For a lot of young players and guys with first experience playing in this competition at this level, kept their composure generally throughout the game, and obviously individual mistakes were punished at other stages of the game. But I think the mentality is always there. We've got such a good belief in what we're trying to do and the way we want to play, and I don't think that ever, I don't think anyone was ever really, overawed by, even when their game was raised. I think we tried to keep sticking to the plan and doing what we went out there to do.
Jackson, Mark Schwarzer, Optus Sport. Just want to know what the general feeling is amongst the group after a performance like last night, well, more so the result, and secondly, how you feel physically, having covered more sprints than anyone else on the pitch last night.
Yeah, obviously the first kind of feeling is disappointment coming off the pitch, but I think there's a lot to take from that, especially, again, as I mentioned, with the squad we have, and to feel disappointed and feel like something kind of got away from you a little bit against the world champions, against players of that caliber, is a huge testament to the mentality of the group and that desire to win, I guess, and get results. And it's definitely something that we have in us all the time, and we'll continue to have going into these next couple of huge games. But physically, obviously, it's a quick turnaround, but something that most of us who have played in Europe are pretty used to. And for myself, this is pretty normal to be able to try and back up big physical performances like that, and I'll be ready to go on Saturday. Absolutely no problems.
Steve Larkin, AOP. Jackson, I think you said after the game that you were confident that you could bounce back quickly. I'm just interested, A, have you actually discussed France as a collective yet? And B, how quickly do you shelve that game and then focus on Tunisia?
Yeah, we had obviously discussions after the game, kind of you dissect it, but it's still quite raw, as I'm sure most people know. When you first come off the pitch, everything's still so fresh. You can't really see things too clearly. So we'll look back at some of those things today, but the mentality has to be to move on quickly. Obviously, we analyse where we can improve, look at what we did well and what we can take forward. But generally speaking, the mentality's already switched into focusing on the next game and using last night as a platform to build into Saturday, rather than overthinking kind of how that game went.
Jackson, Joey Lynch from ESPN. Could you just walk us through in the opening 10-15 minutes when you're really on top? Aziz gave us a bit of an insight last night, what you were trying to do, get out in the counter, low, hard balls into the box, and you could see Nate was inverting during possession. You were getting up high with Riley as well. How were you trying to beat the French in that opening exchanges? What went so right tactically?
It wasn't so much about doing anything specifically to this French team. That's just the game plan that we always try and approach the game with, and obviously we focus a lot on ourselves and the way we want to play with the ball, and obviously a lot of that went right early doors. We were getting ourselves in the areas in which we feel obviously we could hurt them, but we can hurt any team, and obviously it led to scoring the goal with a great bit of quality from Lex and a great finish. So I think there's not a huge focus on in terms of what we could actually have done to affect that team. Obviously, we take small details like the counter-attacks, like trying to play certain kinds of crosses against the defenders who like to defend a certain way, but that's just small details within a framework of, of what we try to do all the time.
Well, in terms of the small details that you're working on, you've got Tunisia coming up, and they're a rather jarring juxtaposition with the French. The French, so much attacking talent. The Tunisians, such an excellent mid and low block. They'll sit back and defend like their lives depend on it. What little details do you need to get right to break them down?
Yeah, obviously there's something we'll look forward to these next couple of days, as I said, after we kind of first get through the analysis of last night, and then, as you say, those details that we can take forward into that type of game, which is obviously going to be a very different opposition, very different. The game will flow in a totally different way. But first things first, as you say, against a team that can play so compact and in that way, you're going to have to find different ways to create chances. And we've got the quality of players who can play in those areas out wide or in between the lines and create chances and score goals.
Hey Jackson, Adrian Archulli from SBS. Are you prepared to have sustained periods of possession, and how are you planning to break them down?
Same way we always try and break teams down. We want to we work on our structures, our patterns, and as I say, those details can change. Small details can change depending on the opposition. As you say, we'll look at where the best areas we can to hurt them, but none of that really changes within the framework of what we always try and do. So everybody's always got a good idea of the structure of the way we want to play, and as you say, working with the analysts and the staff, we'll get those fine details into tune these next couple of days of how we can hurt this specific opposition.
Jackson, Emma Kemp here from The Guardian. You just mentioned overthinking before, and I'm just wondering how you stop yourself overthinking about the stakes now, because they're a little bit heightened, especially given the goal difference.
Yeah, to a certain extent. I think as a group, we've got a really good feeling and a really good culture of being able to push each other forward very quickly. We always have had that, and as an older player now, that's something I've probably had to adapt with and change as well. Is not just focus on yourself, but you've got to help other players as well move on very quickly. And of course now the stakes are higher for the second game, but at the end of the day, coming into this tournament, you're going to have to get 2 positive results to progress, and we've still got full belief that that's more than possible and achievable.
Jackson, Vince Rigari from the SMH, mate. Hope you're well. Adam Krustic wasn't used last night. Arnie said he was looking at using him off the bench. Do you know if he's going to be right for this Tunisia game, and if so, how important he will be? He's obviously a pivotal player in the Socceroos team, and that looks like a game where he's going to be very important.
Is it not a famous Rigari quote? I'm not a doctor, mate.
Well done.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself. He's Aiden's a quality player. We'll obviously want him out on the pitch as soon as he's available. Obviously, circumstances dependent. Sorry. Oh man. Yeah, he's a quality player. Obviously, fans and players alike, we want to see him out there, and when he's available, I'm sure he'll have a big role to play over these next couple of games.
An assist on my own goal there. There we go. Look, to change things up quite dramatically then after that, Jacko, a lot of football chat here.
Yeah.
Just wondering if you've had an opportunity to think about this tournament more broadly. I know you have before you got here, the video and everything. There's been a lot that's been going on since with the One Love armbands, Gianni Infantino's speech the other day. Just wondering what you've made of it all.
Yeah, it's a tough one to dissect. Obviously, it's been changing by the day. Changes, obviously, through regulation, and then changes through decisions that teams have made and players have made. It's tough to react when things change so quickly for those players and those teams. But I think, when all is said and done, I think there'll be a time to really dissect how those messages have gone out and in the way that they chose to do it. And all I can say is speak from our point of view, and obviously how proud I am of our squad and the clear position that we took coming into this tournament. That didn't leave anything to there was no possibility to have that change thrown on us at a late stage. So from our perspective, obviously, that's why we chose to do that, and the timing in which we did it as well. So obviously it's difficult to speak for those other countries. I know if I had to start on the yellow card, I'd be in a right pickle. So I can totally understand how that affects different players. So, but I think when you put yourself in a position where you've maybe not made your position totally clear, and the gesture that you have chosen to take is put in a there's different circumstances come around that, then it becomes difficult to react, especially in such a short space of time. So I'm sure, as I say, I'm sure when the tournament's over, there'll be a time to kind of dissect that in a deeper way, because it's a tough one to kind of deal with as you're focusing on performance and playing games as all those countries are.
Tracy Holmes, ABC. It's not the time for this discussion, but since that was the last question, I will ask it. Do you think the Socceroos are going to apply an equal amount of focus on Australia's own failings in the human rights area, particularly with regard to the Indigenous population? We've got the worst incarceration rates of Indigenous people in the world. And then as a second question, completely back to the game yesterday, were you able to get home and put the disappointment of the loss behind you and spend some time celebrating Craig Goodwin's scoring a goal in the World Cup, putting you ahead of the world champions?
Well, I'll start with that. I sit next to Goody in the meal room, and the first thing we did, I think we sat down and we tried to count how many Socceroos have scored at a World Cup. I think he's the 7th. It's an incredible achievement. First one to score from open play since 2014. Against the world champions. It's an incredible moment for him and his family. Obviously, big picture is disappointment from the result of the game, but you can't help but look at those individual moments for a player in their career and what that means. And he's a fantastic bloke and couldn't be happier for him. So I think, we did have that. We were able to kind of look at that small part of the game and celebrate that for him. So. Again, and confidence that will bring him moving forward in the tournament as well. So, and everybody. So, and on the second part, I think this has been like a long process and a journey that the national team, we've been on as players throughout this process of leading up to making, obviously, the statement that we made, and being a part of conversations with, important organisations that work in these spaces. I hope it's something as a team that we do continue to talk about. I think I've commented in the past on, problems that we have at home, as much as the issues that we've talked about here. Obviously, us as players and being a part of this tournament, we are so intrinsically linked to these issues at this time. That's why we felt it was, people talk about the hypocrisy of talking about these issues and not talking about ones that happen at home. But I hope that's something that we continue to explore in the future, and as part of our growth as a team and as individuals. But that's something to look at. Moving forward.
Jackson, Sam McClure from 3AW Radio. You mentioned a little earlier that you wanted to use the game against France as a platform and take the things that you did well last night into Saturday. What are they in your mind? And when the Socceroos are the best version of themselves, what does that look like, do you think?
I think, obviously, when we were on the front foot early in the game, we looked a totally different kind of threat. Obviously, you've got to be aware of the individual quality of the opposition, and especially that when you're playing against players of that pace, and you don't want to be leaving too much space in behind. But I think when we played on the front foot, we pressed high. That was obviously where we had our most joy. But also, there were good stages of the game where when we sat in that mid block and were compact. As you say, most of the goals came from their quality out in 1v1 situations in wide areas and crosses into the box, and a lot of our plan was about closing that centre of the pitch, stopping their combination play, and there were stages of the game where we did that really well. So there, as you say, defensively and with the ball, there were moments that we did well. Some of our play in the wide areas was excellent as well. So there's little bits and pieces from everywhere on the pitch, I think, that we can do better on, of course, but also moments in the game in which can build us into the next game. And I don't think there was any one thing that we did particularly poorly or particularly brilliantly in the game. I think it was a bit of a bit of both. So, you know, we'll have to, as I say, look at the game as a whole and take that into Saturday.
Hey Jackson, Jack Hart, Stats Perform. Just following on from the question earlier about the One Love armbands, it was revealed earlier that Denmark are planning to discuss a blanket withdrawal from FIFA alongside other UEFA nations, given the ongoing row over One Love armbands. Is that something that you'd support them doing, or kind of consider doing yourself as well?
Listen, can't speak for other countries and decisions they make, you know, and what they feel is the right way to protest in any kind of social injustice that they feel is being done. You know, the One Love armband's an interesting discussion in itself because, you know, conversations I've had with people from the LGBTQI plus community have already described that messaging as vague and lacking a real kind of statement in what it's actually trying to achieve as well. So, you know, there's conversations to be had from every angle about these things, but you know, I can't speak on what other countries will decide to do, and those discussions they'll have, and they'll make the decision that they feel is best for them.
Jackson, Luke Doherty, Fox Sports News. You just mentioned before when you were controlling possession, getting into good positions. Can you just explain to us how France stopped you, because you look so comfortable, how France stopped you actually doing that, knocking you out of that rhythm a little bit?
Just clever players, experienced players that play at the very top level. It's an interesting one because they make you feel like you have time. You know, they're so good at playing in these half spaces where they almost invite you to play into certain areas of the pitch, and they know exactly, you know, when to punish you when that time comes, and that's why they play at the very top level. And that's a lesson for us to learn as well. But yeah, I think that for me, that was probably my feeling within the game, was that they're, as you know, their energy rose and their quality started to shine through. It was also that, yeah, just that little bit of feeling where they can kind of lure you in and make you feel like you've got that extra bit of time, and then they know exactly when to pounce. And yeah, we were punished, you know, at a couple of occasions, you know, with that exact reason.
Just on the 50th cap as well, and congrats on that. The header went oh so close. Did you think that you had a milestone moment in your milestone match there?
Yeah, I had a feeling going in that something would fall for me at some point in the game. It's not one I'll be forgetting about anytime soon when you have an opportunity to score against the world champions of the World Cup. But you know, I'm hoping there's 2 more games to go, and you know, that's what I like to do, getting myself in those goal scoring positions, late runs into the box. And I know there'll be opportunities for me in the next couple of games. And although that one didn't quite, fell a few inches the wrong side of the post, but you know, I'm confident that there'll be more opportunities for me as the tournament goes on.
Jackson, Sam Lewis from the ABC. Hope you can hear me with this bloody helicopter. You spoke yesterday in the mix zone about this idea of bouncing back and being resilient. I'm interested in the psychology of that. Can you speak to how you've learned to deal with these moments over the course of your career, and how you can sort of navigate these very individual, private, emotional moments in a group setting like a team?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and part of your question there was as your career has gone on, and that's a big part of as you can only speak of this from my experience, but that idea of bouncing back is something that has come to me with time and experience. And you know, I was a bad one when I was younger for dwelling on games, dwelling on moments, you know, stirring on things constantly, and you know, letting it affect me away from football as well as, you know, in the footballing environment. And you know, as your career goes on, especially as, you know, guys in here know that have played in the UK, when you do have quick turnarounds in games, that's a big part of it as well. And you're almost forced to find that way to get yourself ready to just go again. And you know, for myself personally, that I found different ways of dealing with it throughout my career. You know, some nights I'll sit up and watch a full 90 minutes back as soon as I get in the door, and just look at individual moments, and maybe, as you say, you see things differently when you watch it back with, you know, a screen on mute, when you're looking at purely tactically and you take the emotion out of it. You know, that's a way something I've done throughout my career that's helped me get better. But you know, for me now, as my role has changed as a player, you know, with my club and here with the national team, that focus becomes less individual, as you say, and becomes more on the group and how you can affect the players around you and younger players and maybe players who don't quite have that mentality of being able to just get on with it. And in this group we have got a really strong mentality. We've got people around us that have that support network as well, and be able to speak openly about feelings of disappointment in yourself and in your own performance as well, and having players around you to lift you back up. There's nothing probably better in a group environment than having those mates around you that can just, as you say, lift you back up to that level straight away, and we have that in abundance here. So for us, we're not feeling down. We don't need that. Don't need to, as I say, overthink, as the word I used before, because we've just got that environment that just lifts everybody straight back up to that level to be able to perform again.
Hi Jackson, David Weiner from Keep Up. 2 questions. If you are under the cosh against Tunisia on Saturday night, what are the biggest lessons that you'll be able to channel from last night, just before that goal, when you're on the back foot? And secondly, I believe you were in Kaiserslautern as a boy when these guys were creating that famous moment. We all knew coming into this tournament that the Tunisia game was going to be like the grand final. What would it be like to be part of a win and a moment like that, and channeling that kind of experience for the weekend?
Yeah, tactically, obviously, there'll be the lessons learned. We need to defend crosses better. That's something we'll work on. Conceding 3 goals from wide areas is obviously a very clear lesson for us to learn. And then obviously looking at their threats when we analyse the opposition coming into the next couple of days, and looking at what we can do to nullify them through our own structures that we always have defensively. But you obviously have to deal with the crosses better. If I can make that as a simple way to start, because disappointing to lose 3 goals from those wide areas. And on the other side of things, obviously lucky enough to have experienced this tournament as a fan and now as a player, and being in that stadium on that day and seeing your heroes create moments of history, and knowing that you're in a position to be able to do the same. It's so exciting, and it's something we realise and we know is there for us. And if we can channel any part of that, we always talk about Socceroos as a team and our history and those key moments and big games and big players, and for us, the idea of being able to produce performance that can live on like that day did for me, for somebody else is an exciting prospect. And we'll be out there, obviously with the fight, but also want to bring that quality to show that we can can play at that level and create that kind of history as well.
It's time for one more.
Jackson, David Bashir from SBS. How are you?
Okay.
Just wondering, a 2-part question. There were 6 of the 11 that made their World Cup finals debut last night. Have you spoken to some of the younger players about the way they handled the pressure, what the pressure looks like moving forward, and some of the decision-making and game management, and maybe what they can expect out of the Tunisia match?
Yeah, well, to be honest, it wasn't so much, as you say, it's all pretty raw and fresh. So we haven't really had a chance to, as you say, dissect it too intensely. But straight after the game, especially some of the players these younger players that were on the park, they play well above their years. They're so the composure they play with, the mentality that they have. Obviously, as you say, the lessons to be learned in terms of the quality of the opposition. There was a big lesson to be learned last night, and I'm sure they'll take that very quickly on board and move forward with it. And we'll see improvement again in players that are improving so rapidly all the time. And it's so exciting to be a part of. As you say, young players, 6 players that first time experiencing playing at this level, and they're already streaks ahead of where I felt I was at that point in my career. So it's exciting to help them along that journey and see their progression as well.